Rest is often framed as weakness, laziness, or something you earn after burnout. Most people do not rest until they're forced to by illness, breakdown, or emotional collapse. This episode reframes rest as a form of intelligence, discipline, and above all, self-respect. My name is Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Justin Gates. And this is the new Ashla Podcast. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast, home of shadow work and self-mastery, where psychology and spirituality come together to help you build a roadmap to your best life. So, rest. I know we've touched on this subject a lot in other episodes, but I figured this is a topic that deserved its own episode.
Yeah, I think we did have an episode on it, but it's one of those that needs repeating. It bears repeating. It's actually really important, because none of us do it. We keep talking about it, but we don't do it very well. So this is, again, just a good reminder for not just you guys, but for me too.
Well, especially around this time of year, the holidays, everyone's being busy getting gifts, making dinners, bringing people together, and it can be exhausting when you're managing a whole bunch of other responsibilities like normal day life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I know this is a reminder for myself as well.
Right. Well, and none of us do it right. We talked about that before. I don't think a lot of us do it good, do it well.
Or at least intentionally.
Do it gooder. We certainly can. Can always do
it's like,
gooder.
I know I've been catching myself. I've been having these little moments where I can catch a break between this and school and work. And it's like all of a sudden I realize I'm doom scrolling on my phone or I'm lost in a video game. And it's like, hey, you need to take some of this time to really recuperate and sit in stillness.
Right.
And yeah, it's easy to fall into the many traps we have in our lives, the many distractions.
Yeah. It's amazing. Rest, when you think about rest, and you think about doing it effectively, it really becomes a blend of like stoicism, spirituality, theology. It's our ancestors from thousands and thousands of years have been doing it better than we are. Of course, they didn't have all the stuff that we have to distract us now. I know we'll get into that today because, and in the notes, you put this in there, and it was really, really good. Because a lot of people will equate the kind of rest we're talking about, the really, really good rest, with boredom. And, just a little spoiler for later, boredom is actually your cue. If you're bored, there's your sign, right? So we'll get into that later, though.
Well, and I think, man, so much of us think we do rest, whether that's hanging out on the weekends, again, binge watching or playing games. We get lost in these activities we consider rest. But we don't we don't stop and think about the impacts it has on our nervous system. Yeah.
Well, and I think most of us don't realize this, but we have really forgotten what rest really means. And as you said, we confuse this stimulation with restoration or distraction with nourishment. And it doesn't. It doesn't at all. Like you said, we collapse on the couch and we'll scroll for 2 hours, or we'll watch, 5 episodes of Tulsa King or something, or the new Fallout show that's coming out. See, like, as a side note, Heather and I will wait for shows we want to watch to kind of get like 2 or 3 in there so that we don't binge watch, because it's easy to do. It's real easy to do.
Oh, yeah.
And, it's like, because when you just watch one, you have to wait the next week. That's rough. That's hard to do. But two's a good number, maybe. But,
See, I love the wait. I love the anticipation, trying to come up with the theorizing what's going to happen in the next episode. And it's like, I know most people love the binge watching, the whole wait for the series to come out. And I'm like, it's over so fast.
Yeah, but we'll wait for 2. Sometimes we'll miss a week and it'll be 3, but we never try to let it get more than 1 or 2 ahead, because then we will sit there and watch it. We really will, because we just really get into it. But that's not relaxation. That's not rest. That's not, that's not on all 4 fronts: the mind, the body, the heart, and the soul. And we really, with all this distraction, with all this stimulation, we do miss out on our soul and our heart sometimes, or our mind, or our body, really.
Well, especially the mind piece, because I think that's the big issue people run into, is people want as far from their minds as they can get. Yeah. And I know so many people that are just stuck in these loops. And one of the greatest concerns is, like, I see so many people operating from burnout nowadays, and they don't even realize it. There's just this deadness to them because they've gone so hard and so nonstop, even if that is working, coming home, playing games, whatever. And it just they get to this point where they don't have energy to do anything outside of work.
Right. Well, and we call it unwinding, you know? Like we'll say, oh, I'm going to come home and unwind.
Relax.
And I'm going to relax. I'm going to unwind. But you're really just kind of couch potato in it, right?
Yeah. Well, it's easy, man. Bad habits are so easy to cultivate, especially once you get into a routine. Like, I mean, you talk about good habits. How many days do you have to go to the gym consistently before it becomes something that's routine? Well, same goes for something like eating at night or watching those shows. I mean, it's so easy to start becoming compulsive with it.
Right. Yeah. And that's something, you know, something I've considered for Heather and I. Like, you know, we try to have our weekly date nights, and maybe we do those on the couch. But that's a purposeful thing. That's, you know, planned and purposeful instead of just, you know. So there are lots of ways that we can do this, but let's talk about what rest is not.
Well, as we were saying earlier, you know, doom scrolling, I think that's one of the biggest traps people fall into. You know, we go back to our self-care episode, and it's like, I need me time. And it's like, me time is something that needs to be intentional. It's not, let me just veg out for an evening and scroll through everything I can just to try to have noise going on in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the popular activity, the second most popular activity, numbing, self-medicating with alcohol or overindulging on food, or like we said, just watching tons and tons and tons of mindless TV.
Well, again, those bad habits, they're so easy to cultivate without you even realizing they have hold until they do. But it's so true. I mean, again, numbing, distraction, these all coincide for a reason. And it's that escapism that people want to chase after.
Yeah.
You know, and another big one is, you know, you sleep for 10 hours, but you're staying emotionally overstimulated. You have all this baggage you're accumulating and you're not processing, you're not sitting with. And I mean, it follows you into your dreams where you're dreaming you're still at the keyboard at work answering emails.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I used to do radio calls. I used to call out radio codes in my sleep. That was probably the PTSD from all the crazy stuff we dealt with, but
you know, just a little bit.
You know, a little bit. You know, procrastination. You know, that's an interesting one. You put those in the notes. Take me through that.
Man, so a lot of people, when they procrastinate, will try to give it this air of rest. I can't remember exactly what the term is, but it's we are ignorant to what we are doing until we become aware of it. And often procrastination comes around as like, oh, I'm working 40 hours a week. I'm doing all these things. I don't need to do anything else further. And again, we're talking about rest, which is important. But procrastination often will become busy work with no outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. Which just ends up causing you more stress. It does me. I'm getting better at checking myself. You know, I'll sit down and I'll have a thought that I need to start doing something or working on something. And then because everything is too slow for me, right? I mean, you follow so far, everything's too freaking slow all the time. Like the internet's too slow. I've got 2 gigs and it's too damn slow for me sometimes, or my computer runs a little slow when I'm working on something. I get annoyed by that. So then I'll click over to something else to keep me busy while this is doing its thing. And then it'll be 15 minutes before I get back to the thing. Right.
You know? Well, it's also that law where it's like, if you have something really important you got to do, and it's only going to take 15 minutes, an hour of your time, you will do anything else but that thing. And if you got that thing done, it would be a way for yourself to just feel complete for the day. Now, one thing I just got to say to that, though, is rest isn't something you earn.
No.
Rest is something that is not
you
only...
need.
Are we all deserving of, but yes, we need it.
It's mandatory.
We need it. Yeah.
Because in the self-care episode, we talked about burnout. That was kind of the central theme. And, dude, burnout is rough. We talked about that before, but it could cause some serious issues.
Yeah,
so,
in every realm of your life.
Yes, it's mandatory. It's mandatory. So what is true rest then? If these things aren't rest, what is true rest?
You know, I think the best way to know if you are resting is, are you shifting your nervous system out of that constant grind, that survival mode? Are you shifting it down where you're able to relax it, where you're able to sit with it? Again, I was talking about stillness earlier. Stillness is something I have become more and more apt to implement into my daily rituals, because that is where I find the deepest rest. It can be some of the most chaotic rest because my nervous system has all these charges that's built up and it's starting to overflow, but I allow it to process through, and the calmness that comes after is so profound.
So then rest is a discipline.
By far. It is not something, again, we talk about people going into escapism, and even like you brought up earlier at the beginning of this episode, this is not something you just master one day. It is a constant, intentional effort.
Yeah, it's a state of being. When we think about state of being, well, that means that I'm actively doing something. Yeah, you're actively resting. I know that sounds kind of paradoxical, sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it is a discipline that you must develop through practice. Practice, practice, practice. You haven't said that in a while. I just want to call you out on that.
Yeah, I haven't. Man, I'm dropping the ball. One of the first self-help books I ever read was The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. Mm-hmm. And in there, one of them was talking about how you need to take a weekend away, no distractions, no music, no books. You can go into nature, but your goal is to let your mind just go crazy. And I think one of the reasons that stillness is so scary for people and so overwhelming is the way it describes it is it's like a pressure cooker. And the more stuff you have bottled up in there, the more it just wants to overflow, and that's why you distract, that's why you numb. And you got to give yourself that time for that pressure cooker to release that steam.
Yeah, well, and you definitely, there are things you're hiding from. Let's just be honest about it. And there's nowhere to hide when there's nothing to distract you.
Yeah.
So rest is a state of being. It's not a lack of activity. This is a discipline. And real rest is, as you said, when you can feel and notice and identify the shift of your energy, of your nervous system, of your whole being, really. Because this is where the body repairs, literally. It can't repair if it's constantly under stress, right?
Stimulation, yeah.
Yeah, and this is where the spirit starts to breathe. This is the place where emotions start to settle and we sit with them instead of stacking and adding more to that bill that we talk about that comes due.
Bill.
Right? It's where you start to hear the whispers that we talk about and the nudges and the taps instead of just random noise.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it allows our minds to integrate itself. All these thoughts, all these experiences, it gives space for the experiences of our lives to start integrating with our minds and our perceptions.
Yeah, this rest is again vitally important because it affects all the systems of our being. You cannot properly even digest food if you're under stress all the time. Your cells cannot repair and heal, right? All those vitamins and supplements you take, none of those are going to stick to you if you don't give yourself a moment of rest. Your body just doesn't have time to deal with it. Your mind has time to process memories and process both good and bad things that happen in your life, right? Your hormones can't balance and regulate. There's a lot of things you can't do if you're constantly under stress. And the only
another big one
go ahead.
One of the big ones with the mind is it's one of the greatest ways to sharpen your discernment.
Mm-hmm.
When you're allowed to sit in that stillness and allow these experiences to integrate, you allow yourself the ability to see things from a perspective that's not so immediate. Because often when we go through something, we only get that front flash of the emotions we felt and what happened in that moment. But through that rest, through that time away from that, it allows us to really look at things from outside ourselves and see situations for what they are and how we should proceed.
If you're constantly clenched up all the time, and you'd be sitting in the most perfect meditation pose ever and still be clenched up. This rest is literally built into us to keep us healthy and to keep us sane and to keep us from losing it and freaking out. And so, yeah.
Another important thing with rest is it really helps us open up to our creative juices. It's like, I know so many people, myself included, I struggled with the longest time finding ways for creative outlets. But when we find times of rest and we're able to channel that anxiety we end up cultivating over time, it can be channeled into some of the greatest pieces. It can go into our intuition. It allows clarity to come back online.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the big distinction here is, we're not talking about sleep, we're talking about rest, right? Rest isn't what your body is doing. Rest is what your nervous system is doing, what your energy centers are doing, how you repair those bridges between the four parts of yourself. Those get wore out over time, and you need to have time to rebuild those and rest, right? And if you're always clenched up, which means you're always under stress, then the light that we so fondly talk about on this show cannot reach those places until you soften, until you relax that inner world so that the light can reach those places that you've been guarding with tension and stress. And that's really the only place where we can find our true center, our soul, And it can be moment to moment. You can only have 20 minutes of rest, but man, 20 minutes of rest is way better than 10 hours of just nervous sleep.
Oh, by far. Well, and I will say, it doesn't mean that sleep isn't a bad thing, but when you are overstimulated, your nervous system does not check out. At least not to the capacity it needs to. But good deep rest after you've allowed your nervous system to calm down can be so healing.
Well, and we intuitively know this. When you're sick, what does the doctor always tell you to do? They don't tell you to go home and sleep. They tell you to go home and rest, right?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, sleep is important, but if all you're doing is, if you're sleeping under these conditions and not actually resting, not getting a restful sleep, then you're just barely getting through it. Show of hands, how many people wake up tired every freaking morning, right? That's not sleep, man. That's not rest. That's sleep. That's not rest.
Yeah, true that.
When you got a pile of cans next to you, Red Bull cans, you're not resting, you're sleeping.
Right.
You really, so... And that's kind of what I meant, 20 minutes of true rest is better than 10 hours of bad sleep.
Yeah. Well, I think that brings up another good point that isn't really in these notes, but man, caffeine and rest, they do not like to go hand in hand sometimes.
No, they don't. They don't because, it's chemical energy, man.
Yep. Well, it's like the whole point of it is to stimulate your nervous system.
Right. But caffeine also increases cortisol, which is a stress response.
Yep.
So
well, it's like
if you're stressed out, so if you're stressed out, you're burnt out, you're tired, drink more caffeine just so you can be more chemically stressed.
Yeah, right.
What you should be drinking is water. Water. This is decaf, by the way.
So you're smart about that. I know it's like
I don't do a lot of
long
caffeine.
Weekend, late nights.
Well, I just try to get better sleep. You know what I mean? Just better restful sleep. So yeah, I mean, nicotine is something people use to stay awake or to keep them going, keep them stimulated. But again, nicotine triggers cortisol response too. We need to get Jenna back on here and talk about just dive into cortisol and what causes it, because cortisol, and this is kind of an aside for this, but we are talking about stress. Cortisol is that stress that has no cause, which is why it's really becomes that silent killer, because we have this stress hormone going through us, and we don't have an external cause other than actually drinking caffeine or drinking too much caffeine. I'm never going to sit here and say
dietary things.
Yeah, and I'm not going to sit here and say stop drinking coffee, stop drinking Red Bulls. You know what? You do whatever works for you. I'm just telling you what happens when you drink too much of it. You know what I mean? It's like, you create more cortisol, which must be released to the body, which really can only be released to the body through moving it and stuff. So, but if you're tired, you're not going to want to move very much. So then you just keep drinking more stress. That's all I'll say about it.
No, you're absolutely right, though, and it's a perpetual cycle when you go through that. And when we talk about rest, we're talking about moving from those stress responses.
Yeah.
Life is stressful. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
But it's about finding time to switch out of the sympathetic nervous system into the parasympathetic nervous system. Which, I mean, when you get into rest, it activates repair, digestion, emotional processing, recovery, all sorts of things. And it's so important. And when we don't allow that system to come online, hardly ever, I mean, you're stressing your system. You see people aging so quickly. Like, I wonder what percentage of the population operate from high cortisol levels.
Well, according to the show you did with Jenna, it was a lot. Most of us probably. But again, it's mostly nutritional. You know, the body will create cortisol. And look, cortisol, again, we talk about good feelings and bad feelings and good chemical. Nothing is good or bad. These things have purpose. Cortisol has a purpose. It keeps us from dying. Right? It keeps us alert. It keeps us a little bit stressed out so it can heighten our survival instincts, our senses. It's just, you know, again, we overindulge in this society in the modern time for the last, you know, maybe 100 years that I can think of. You know? We overindulge in a lot of these luxuries, you know, and we do it for not great reasons, for bottom lines and for, you know, just so we can spend 16 hours in the office instead of 8 hours at home with our family or with our friends or whatever. So you're going to get me.
We have a society that's so
you're going to get me to spin off on a tirade here.
It's the hustle culture. That and then instant gratification. Everything's so easy to obtain now. From sugary foods to whatever you could want. I mean, Amazon. I can order whatever I want to my doorstep. I don't need to leave the house. I don't need to be active or social. Yeah. Which, these little things where we start to drop the ball, I mean, we shrink our capacity. Where it starts becoming stressful to go to the grocery store.
Right. Well, I'll give you a perfect example this morning. My youngest isn't feeling good, and she needed some Gatorade. But it was like 15 degrees outside and everything was covered in snow and ice and I was not feeling it. I had the thought, well, I was like, I could just DoorDash this. But then I'm thinking, then someone else has to get in a car and maybe crash to get here to bring me my Gatorades when the store is like, you know, less than two blocks down the road. So I just got my butt dressed and just went down there. But the thought occurred to me. The thought occurred to me because I can just have someone else do it and I can just stay here and do what I want to do. Right? So you're right. We have been conditioned with comfort. And boy, when someone takes our comfort away, do we not get the pitchforks and torches? You know, we are ready to kill.
Man, makes us soft, I'm not going to go down a tangent with this. I could go down a rabbit hole here.
I know. So why do people struggle with this concept of rest?
You know, I think for a lot of people, they equate productivity with worth, which is so caustic because we end up, when we want to seek validation outside of ourselves, we will do everything we can to try to put on that air of success, of having it all together and having it all in general. It's this all-consuming need for expansion, which is partially human design. But when we allow our shadows to run the show, it can become detrimental to our health.
Yeah. And this is where the ethos of truth comes flying in like a Mack truck, right? This is time to get like kind of a little brutally honest with ourselves. Because most of our battles aren't with exhaustion itself, but with the things that we're forced to confront. We like to just tell ourselves, I'm just too busy. I can't get to that right now. I'm just too busy. Or I don't have time to rest. But as all things, the truth always runs deeper than we like. Many people just don't know how to rest because rest feels not great.
Yeah,
right?
Or even scary. I know. It's like I spent most of my adult life, I had all these different drives, all these things I wanted to accomplish that I never went anywhere with. But you bet your butt I was constantly staying busy with something because that was worlds better than having to sit there and realize where my life was.
Yeah. Yeah. So another one is stillness brings emotions to our surface. It brings them up. It's like, hey, you're not doing nothing right now. Let me talk to you for a second. Since you've been ignoring me for 13 years, right?
Yep.
Because movement is a distraction. Busyness is like anesthesia. Kind of numbs us to it. Puts us off of it. Takes us, out of sight, out of mind. But when we finally stop, everything we've been avoiding rises. And that's good things and bad things. But the things we don't try to avoid the good things. We always try to avoid the things that are uncomfortable. Right? It could be grief or anger or whatever. People don't fear rest. They fear what stillness and rest reveals.
Yeah. No one wants to confront those demons, especially when they're so close to the surface. I remember when I first got into shadow work, and it's like, it took me a while to like grasp how the concept really worked. Because it's like, all right, I can tell I've been running from a lot of stuff. How do I shine the flashlight? Man, once you start seeing some of the stuff at the beginning, it's like, ooh, do I really want to go down this rabbit hole? Like, this is dangerous.
No, but you must.
Yep.
You must. I'll sit in your pocket, Michael, like Jiminy Cricket. We'll do it together, right? I can't do it for you, but I'll go for the ride.
Yep. Well, and I think so many people they have these insecurities that amplify and amplify and amplify, and no one wants to, not no one, people in general, especially ones that avoid rest, are avoiding having to confront these shadows that are lurking in the corners, quietly dictating their lives. I love the Michael Singer wrote about it, and he talks about it like a thorn in the side, and it's just like, instead of pulling the thorn out, we build little barricades around and do all we can not to bump it again.
Because it hurts,
sitting
man.
still is letting it get bumped.
Wow, that's perfect. I like that. Me, I just get in there and get it, man.
Yep.
And I hate it. Where
but
we
the
live
relief
for many, many
after
years.
is worth it.
What's that?
The relief after is so worth it.
Oh, because it hurts for another 3 or 4 seconds, then it's gone. You forget about it. It's gone. We have these things we call goat heads, and they don't really have them here in Colorado, but in Nevada, goat heads are everywhere. And they are they're like natural landmines, but they're only like the size of a pea. The size of a pea. But man, you take 4 steps without your shoes, and they are all in your feet.
Oh, and they are just as...
Yeah.
I've run into those before. I know what you're talking about. They are horrible.
I don't know what they call them out here in Colorado. I don't know whatever you guys call them, put them in the comments. But we called them goat heads because they look like, they have like these little goat horns that come off like every other angle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you got to pull them out. You got to pull them out, man.
All those things are rough.
You got to pull them out.
It's like stepping on a pin needle.
A lot of people will avoid rest too because we've been taught through hard lives, hard living, right? That letting down our guard is dangerous.
Well, it's like as we're talking about how the shadows are there and how we're going to feel all these emotions, like, of course, staying in motion feels safer. I think one of the most important aspects of this is it's like, until you learn to sit with those emotions, you don't know what true peace feels like, true safety.
Yeah.
Because we never got to experience what safety was.
Yeah. And in our tradition, our philosophy, this one might hit the heart a little bit, but I do it with love and care, as much love and care as I can. But if rest makes you anxious, that is not a character flaw. It's a sign that you just have never been taught how to feel safe sitting with yourself, right? And for us, this is our shadow being misaligned with us. It's just misalignment. It's not the end of the world. I know it feels like it, but it's not the end of the world. It's misalignment. It's just disharmony, right? Because for whatever reason, we have fear inside instead of letting the light shine. And for us, learning to rest isn't about relaxing. It's about reforming and changing and integrating those patterns that frankly stole your peace. But there's always good news, right? There's always good news here. When you start this practice of rest, and when it starts to feel unsafe or really uncomfortable, that is your sign that you are ready to push into healing. There's always good news. Go ahead.
No, I think that's an important point because even though it seems unbearably uncomfortable at first, the more you practice, the more you sit with it, the more you allow yourself to reach these higher states of peace. And that's really what the goal is. And then I was just going to say, when circling back to worth is, often, so many of us, we were praised for doing, not for being.
Yeah.
And that perfectionism can haunt us because we feel like we're constantly having to achieve, constantly having to build something in order to maintain our worthiness.
Or be obedient or perform, yeah.
When it's like one of the biggest pillars of this work is realizing you are enough as you are now. Everybody
deserves rest. It's built into our system. We were designed to use it. It's a fuel. You can't go forever without it. You just can't. You can't. And you know, like when you're truly resting, when you're truly sitting and being still and finding the center and all these big fancy spiritual words that we use, it's basically you and you. So there's no validation there. There's no gold stars. There's no applause. It's just you with yourself. You have to find a place where that's enough. And that can be tough to do for some. It can be tough to do. Especially people with a lot of siblings, right? If you had a ton of siblings, that's really tough to do. Because, you're literally fighting for your spot in the pecking order a lot of ways.
Yep.
So you really have to perform. You really have to be the obedient one or the strong one or the whatever.
So what are some types of rest that we can start practicing? What are some ways people can start integrating rest more into their life?
So I'll start off by saying, most people think that sleep is rest. That's just one dimension of restoration. That's just one. You can sleep like I said, you can sleep 10 hours and still wake up exhausted. I do it sometimes, right? Because what if the rest you needed wasn't physical? What if it was emotional or mental or spiritual, right?
Yeah.
Our bodies are amazing things. They could do a lot on very little, right? You can go 3 weeks without food and 3 days without water and so on and so forth, right? And we usually take care of our bodies better than we take care of the rest of ourselves. So we're going to talk about some things that we're going to talk about the other things too. And of course, the easiest one is physical rest. And this is what most people think of first. If you're lying down or you're chilling on the couch, you're just, you go get a massage and that cures the tension, or you pop some Tylenol or whatever. Physical rest is that time in your sleep when you're like in deep sleep, right? That your body starts to restore and repair muscle tissue and energy reserves. But again, you can be physically still and asleep and still mentally or spiritually or emotionally in chaos. So that's why physical rest alone is never the solution.
Well, I think another important one's mental rest, which, removing the inputs, no decision making, just a quiet escape. One of my favorite things to do is to go wander in nature.
Mm-hmm.
It allows the mind to process everything it needs to. You allow yourself to not have any real inputs, and it's quiet, it's peaceful, and you have the abundance of the world around you without it being overstimulating.
Yeah. Well, this is why, sitting still in silence and being in nature, as you said, meditation, that's why they feel so good. Because they start to interrupt the flood of thoughts and the flood of responsibilities and agreements that we make. Emotional rest, of course, would be the next one. This one is tough though, because it requires a ton of authenticity. A lot of honesty, self-honesty. And what this kind of looks like, it could be, just refusing to stop performing for people, right?
Yeah.
To stop managing everybody else around you.
Well, it's those emotional mass, right?
Yes, to stop holding it together all the time, because you really don't need to. You don't need to hold it together all the time. Dude, when I hear that phrase, just holding it together, that sounds like a cry for help to me whenever I hear that.
Yeah, right?
Come here and fall apart. I will make sure all the pieces get picked up and we'll figure that part out later, right? Just holding it all together. That's such a damaging thing. But that's what we were taught to do. That's what society really requires of it. It expects us to do. I won't say require, but it expects us to do. It's those moments again where you say, instead of saying I'm holding it all together, it's like, you know what? I'm not fine. I'm not good. I'm being held by duct tape and super glue at this moment, and I really just need to fall into pieces.
Well, I think even another big one with that is it's speaking your truth.
Yes.
That was one thing that I didn't realize till I had my aha moment. Because I was one where it's just like, unless you're really crossing a boundary, I'm not going to express myself. But, man, I realized once you started speaking your mind in those moments, and especially when it upholds those boundaries, it creates this air of peace that otherwise your soul can feel the infringement. It creates that stress, that anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay. And it's important to. I won't say it's okay. It's important that you let yourself be seen. And you let yourself be supported. And you let yourself fall into pieces with someone you trust. It is important because that
Well,
gives that gives your heart and your inner world a way to soften so that you can start to do more things and grow more things and shine more light in there.
And this ties right into social rest, which, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you got introverts and extroverts, so the levels vary here. But being able to be away from the demands and relationships that are going on in your life, being able to take that space for yourself to recharge, re-energize. It's you work those 60-hour weeks for a long period of time, you're going to start getting burnt around the edges and having all these emotional flare-ups and not performing to the best version of yourself. It's learning to set those boundaries with others and with your lifestyles.
Yeah. Heather and I don't get sick very often because we check in. We check in a lot, right? We check in with each other a lot, and we don't get sick a lot, like, typical like flus and stuff like that. Just during the holiday was the first time I really had a stomach flu in years, and I'm coming out of a whole stressful period, as we've talked about on the show from time to time. And that is definitely part of it, right? But we check in all the time and say, she is working 55 to 60-hour weeks right now. I'm working kind of a hybrid where I'm working about half at home and half at work. So that frees up more time for me to do more things around here. And I stopped her yesterday. I said, hey, because she came home and she was just exhausted. She was physically, just mentally tired. And I said, hey, what are some things I can do around here that take this burden off of you? Because I really want you to spend your days off resting and doing the things that you want to do, right? So for us, that equates to really no stress in our relationship, but it literally translates into physical health, right? So it's really, really important. For the social rest thing, when the four of us went on our little trip a couple weekends ago, we didn't have to make any damn decisions.
Nope.
Just, hey, is it time to eat? Yes, I'm hungry. And we just meandered off into the town, ate, shared some quality time, and then we came back to the boiling pits of hell there, and then we jumped in and got out, but it just flowed. It was just we made no decisions. We really couldn't get on our phones or anything because, well, the service up there wasn't great, but we kind of got that physical rest, the mental rest, the emotional rest, and the social rest.
Yeah.
But that's only because of the way we went about it. You don't have to go on trips to find these things, as we'll get into, right? But so yeah, I mean, even though we were socializing, we did it in a way that was like we weren't making any decisions. We weren't under any demands or time restraints and stuff like that. So
Yeah, we had to be here
And
at
of
this
course-
time. None of that.
well, and of course the four of us, we are who we are everywhere. So, there was none of that, performing or any of that masking or any of that kind of crap going on either. So it doesn't mean that we don't do those things from time to time at work or whatever, but we do, right?
Yep.
Even the best of us still do it. But that's what that kind of rest looks like. The next one is sensory rest.
Before we
Go
jump
ahead.
into that, one thing
Yeah.
I just got to add to a point you were talking about earlier is if you are doing demanding weeks, 60-hour work weeks, like one of the things I've had to learn this year, managing school full-time, work full-time, this podcast, is it's like just because you got a busy load doesn't mean you can't make time for rest. If anything, it means be as intentional as you can with the time you got. Which I think it's great, like you were saying, with your relationship. Like, you guys are partners, so you're able to sort of fill in the gaps with her longer days.
Yeah.
But it's so important that you do stop and take time for yourself to have these moments of rest, especially if you're someone who is pushing crazy hours.
Yeah, and look, it doesn't matter what kind of work you're doing. If you're sitting in front of a computer for 15 hours a day, that takes a toll. If you're digging ditches all day long, that takes a toll. If you're managing a busy restaurant, that takes its toll. If you're working in a library, it takes a toll. Work is work, right? It doesn't matter what kind of work. You just tend to get tired in different parts of yourself, but it doesn't mean that the other parts can't also get burnout. People tend to forget that. If Joe Bob over here is digging ditches all day, people just assume, well, he's just going to be physically tired all the time. That doesn't mean that. Just because that's the work he's doing, He still has worries, he still has concerns, he still has a boss, he still has deadlines, he still has all this stuff that we all have, right? And the same goes for the programmer who's there 15 hours a day trying to get GTA 6 out released, which, you know, we probably will never see, but you know, they go through all kinds, even physical exhaustion too. So I think I'll let you take the sensory rest. This is kind of your thing. You do the sabbaticals from the phones and stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean it's so important to unplug from life, you know, reducing noises going on around you, that silence, which can be so important. Lights, one of the biggest things we loved about this apartment. We have no overhead lights.
Yeah.
So we have very subtle lighting in the apartment, which is so good for the senses. And then above all, screens. Like I will watch myself. I end up catching myself doom scrolling for a couple hours. That app is off my phone for a month, if not longer. Because it's one of those black holes that's so easy. Again, habits are easy to form, and that's one of those habits that can easily weed its way into your daily life where all your free time is spent just doom scrolling.
Yeah, so about 10 years, so for about the last 10 years, give or take, Heather and I haven't had a TV in our room, which is pretty typical, I think, for the average person these days to have a TV in their room, right? But we don't. And in fact, and we used to do that because the TV in the living room, you know, all of our kids were little, they grew up together, you know, so they were always on the TV or doing something in there, whatever, and we never could have time to just sit and chill and watch TV together. So it was always in our room. But about 10 years ago, you know, we decided we're not doing that because we sleep like crap when we have a TV in there, right? And our room is dark. It is dark, you know, and there's nothing better than getting into bed and laying down and there be complete silence. Well, except for her stupid fan that she has to run or whatever. But even in the wintertime.
That's me and my relationship.
As far as the sensory stuff goes, I do the same thing though. I'll come home from work and I turn off most of the lights. I'll go sit in the room. I have a very my side light is on, which isn't very bright, you know? It's very calm. I try not to be on my phone too much. It just, yeah, I'm the same way.
When
I don't
the
even
TV
listen to
idea, I mean,
music on my way to work. It's super quiet because that's my reset time.
you know, well, and drives are really good to utilize. So many people blast their music, turn on a podcast. I'm guilty of it. Like, but it's important to have those moments. I know when I've been really overstimulated for the day, I might put on some jazz or something really mellow, but I'll use that time to just allow myself to process the day.
Yeah. Her and I drive around most of the time with the radio turned off, honestly, these days. You know, it gives us more time to pay attention, you know, to what's going on and to whatever we're talking about.
We do the same thing on our days off. I don't even take my phone with us. That way I have no distractions, no phone.
That's an effective method right there.
So until I wanted to look something up. I've gotten too used to Google Maps and Google. And then we got spiritual rest. And for us, for me, this is the deepest point of restoration because it's the one that's most often left out, I think. It's that reconnecting to our purpose, to our meaning, to the light. It's where all things are good. It's where we can go to find safety within. Because after we shed these moral coils, our souls will still live. And our souls are just kind of chilling. I don't remember who it was. I think it was Courtney when we had her on last. She was talking about how the soul is just like a hippie at a festival. It's just like, whatever, man, whatever. I'll be fine after all this. You guys can just, you know, deal with all this crap. I'll be fine, right? But when you can reconnect to that, when you can start to really sit in that, you can feel like you're seen and you're heard and you're guided, and most importantly, that you're never alone, right? And we practice things like meditation and prayer and nature. Again, perfect place for that. And of course, you know, things that require stillness. Because really, spiritual rest is important because it restores alignment. And really, so at the end of at the end of this segment, it's like most people try to fix their exhaustion with sleep, because that's what our bodies just do. It just collapses, right? It just collapses and sleeps. But oftentimes what we really need is emotional peace and mental quiet and spiritual grounding to help us truly rest.
Well, it's one of the most effective ways to just allow ourselves to be in the present. Like, I think that is part of the phobia of rest. As everyone's either living in the future or living in the past or bouncing in between the two. And we forget about how important this moment is. How much power we have in this moment.
Right.
Like, when I was going through my PTSD at its worst points, one of the greatest things I was able to do to help ground myself was to realize, in this moment, I am safe.
It's the only point in time you have power, man. I know I say this a lot, but it really is. You know, PTSD is trauma, and PTSD and stuff is stuff about the past. Anxiety, panic is stuff in the future. In the moment is where you have power. It's where you have choice. It's where you can discern, what can I actually control? And if I can control any of this, then I can be safe. I can have power. Lack of power is scary, but you have power. You just got to remember. Just remember it. So how do we actually practice? What's that?
We should do an episode on that.
Power of the moment. We should do that. Look for that soon. It'll be out soon. I could talk about that. I like that.
I could talk about that.
So I could, because I love talking about it. I love talking about a lot of the stuff we're talking about. It's very hard to have these kind of conversations just out in the wild, you know, because people are either thinking that you're trying to sell them something, or people are trying to hide from themselves. And none of this is bad. This is conditioning. Yep. You know, we are conditioned to be leery and think everyone's trying to sell us something, or somebody's trying to, you know, con us into something or whatever. But no, these are conversations people should be having with each other every day. This is the stuff that actually matters, I think. You know, sure, the weather's nice. We talk about the weather, but that's a 48-second conversation. You know, you open the curtains, yep, it's snowing. That's about it. You know, I don't really have any use for the average snowfall over the last 50 years, because I may not even be here for another 50. So let's just talk about right now, what's happening, right?
Yep.
So how do we actually start to practice real rest? How do we develop this discipline in practice?
So I've talked a lot about habits this episode. I think one of the greatest things you can do is schedule rest. For me, my rest is very much routine. I rest for the first 10 minutes of my morning when my day's starting off, and then I also do it the 20 minutes before bed. Usually I'll take a shower if I really want to ground myself, because I love being in water. So I'll just take a hot shower, sit there, and that forces me, with no distractions, to really be dedicated to just sitting with myself. So scheduling is probably one of the greatest things you can do. And you just start small. Do like 10, 20 minutes. You do not need to do more than that at first. You cultivate the ability to sit with yourself.
Yeah, and look, I want to point out that we're kind of talking about this in a way that it might seem like we're talking down on people. I have faith that everyone who's listening to this podcast today, this episode, is smart and is smart enough to understand rest, right? I think we all kind of understand it here. But where we're disconnected is the practice and discipline of it, right? So scheduling is a really good one, right?
Yeah.
Not that your nervous system really cares about your to-do list, but if you don't plan it, your body will eventually force it.
Yeah. Well, it's just the best way to start integrating it into your lifestyle. Habit stacking, like James Clear in Atomic Habits. He always talks about when you want to add a good habit, you got to either stack it on top of another habit or use it to replace a habit, but make it routine, because that's how you start making it a real habit.
Well, and that's how you make it, and that's how you present it to yourself as important, right? It must be a part of your routine. Not just when you emotionally collapse or physically or burn out or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And you really do need to start small. It needs to be an unfolding. You got to give yourself some grace here. You're not going to nail it the first 1,000 times you do it. Maybe some of you nail it in the 12th time. But if you're like me, it took me a couple hundreds of times to do it. So, 10 to 20 minutes is perfect. Here's something that plagued me early on, and I know it did you too. adding more stimulation instead of removing and unplugging, right? Because real rest is very much subtractive. Turning off the screens, turning off the scrolling, the podcast. Please, come back to listen to this one when you're done unplugging, but the news, the notifications.
Well, stimuli in general, like it's crazy. Yeah. We live in a society, especially with like shorts. You look at the neurological damage it causes binging short form content, the ADHD it cultivates in your brain because you're constantly new stimulation. Like, we live in a society that is full of distraction and full of stimulation.
Now, before we continue, this is going to sound very, what's the word I'm looking for? We make short videos for you guys. We do. And we make a lot of them. So, Michael, what are you actually saying about, is it okay to consume some short videos? Are we evil for making them? Are we just contributing to the problem at this point?
We're jumping into the algorithm, but the key is moderation. Moderation in all things.
There you go. You made me feel bad a little bit there. I thought you were shaming me because I make all the shorts, and I'm like, oh man, I put out like 30 a week.
That's why you do it. I don't want to contribute to that darkness.
I know. So you make me do it. I see what you're doing there. Listen to your body's natural rhythms and needs and wants, right? Every one of us has moments of the day where our energy will dip, or our eyes are glassed over, and we just kind of not breathing great, and we're just in a fog. Pretty sure that's our body's asking us for a pause, right? For a breather, for a moment, at least. And as we talked about earlier, most of us say, nope, we got stuff to do, bro. Down the Red Bull, and on we go.
Be intentional with your breaks at work. Like, I'm very thankful that I can make my breaks whenever I want at work, but there's times where I get into that fog, and it's like, all right, I'm going to go take a walk right now because I need to get myself back online. Mm-hmm. So I just take a restful walk, no distractions, maybe a little music in the ear, and I just walk around the compound just to get my mind clear and get back on track.
Practice doing one thing at a time. We say this a lot. Multitasking it just taxes your system, right? So when you slow down to do one thing at a time, and this goes back to the episode on mindfulness. Mindful eating, mindful walking, mindful breathing, mindful doing the dishes, mindful wax on, wax off, right? Being mindful. That's what Mr. Miyagi was really teaching us, was to be mindful, doing these normal, boring, everyday things, right? He was also teaching us karate, but, he was teaching us to be mindful. Sand the fence, paint the fence, on, wax off. Do your dishes mindful. Do your eating mindful. Enjoy the moment. Be in the moment as much as you can. That's how you slow down. That's how you rest. The rest is the rest of the stuff we do is just motion. We're just moving. We're not really, it's not really, some motion is for purpose, but most of it, just like our subconscious, just kind of happens. It's just people in motion.
Well, and like one of the most important parts with those motions is it's not thought work. Now, I'm not talking about mundane tasks like, work in manufacturing, which I'm not dissing on. I work manufacturing. A lot of those jobs, as simple as the movements are, require a lot of focus and a lot of thought. But it's learning to just feel what you need to feel. It's learning to be present within those emotions as they arise, even if you're doing something very simple.
Yeah. So most people will, maybe not most, but a lot of people will say that they're bad at resting, Michael. I'm just bad at that. I'm bad at that. What do you say to them?
I think a lot of people they have this guilt. Like, rest feels so unnatural to them. But when we realize that it's something that not only are we worthy of, but it's something we need, it can help sort of mediate that guilt we feel. Because for many of us, I know for me, before I started this journey, I thought I rested all the time, and I never rested. I slept 3 to 5 hours a night. I was constantly moving, and I always thought, well, while I'm being distracted with this thing, that's me resting. But if I were to stop, I would start feeling such strong emotions. And to me, what they paraded around in my mind is that I'm not doing enough. that I'm not being enough, that
Right.
I'm wasting my time right here doing this.
Would it just surprise you if I told you, and maybe I probably did tell you this, would it surprise you if I said that feeling guilty for this is very natural and normal?
I could believe it.
It is. It is. These things are very natural things that we go through. We must go through when we're integrating our shadow. The whole purpose of every show is to integrate shadow, right? That's kind of our whole thing, right?
Yep.
And all of this is natural. Even the feeling guilty part, because this comes from conditioned beliefs and agreements that we make with people, with the world, with things that we can't even see, with parts of ourself that we're not in the mood to deal with, right? Your value is inherent. One of my favorite axioms is the inherent greatness of all things and all people, right?
Yep.
It's one of your favorites too, I know. Your value is inherent. You don't have to earn shit. It was already granted. It's a birthright, if you will. It's granted.
Now you just have to believe it.
Yes, you just have to remember. You just have to remember, because believing is maybe not knowing, but remembering. I know. You must remember, and you will. Give yourself some grace, because this is all very normal part of this process. Going back to something I said earlier, rest feels boring before it starts to feel like it's working or nourishing, right?
Yeah.
Because
I think boredom
boredom is
often
that.
feels like the excuse you give yourself. You start getting agitated in your nervous system, and you want to reach for your phone.
Yeah.
You want to stand up. It is so uncomfortable.
Yes. Well, yeah, because you're detoxing, bro.
Yeah.
You're detoxing from overstimulation, period. It's just, you've always got so much crap going on. And you get bored because, I mean, I see it a lot in the really younger kids. You know, kids that are the age of my youngest. And even, well, hell, all my kids maybe. Maybe not the older ones, because they were kind of came in they're more millennial type. So they kind of closer to us Gen Xers. But the alphas and the Zers, man, they get bored easy. And it's crushing for them. It is crushing because they, probably were born with iPads. I don't remember mine being. Did they come out with iPads?
Well, no, I've read studies on this. It's called brain rot. The things with kids who have access to YouTube and stuff like that, where we're talking about how unhealthy it is for adults to be going through shorts. Mm-hmm. It's so much worse to the developing mind.
Yeah. So boredom is really just kind of, you're just detoxing from that overstimulation, and you must give it time. Boredom, nothing in this universe is empty, truly empty. And boredom is not emptiness. It's just creating space. The more time you give it, the better off it'll be. And it will start to feel nourishing. It'll start to feel, rest will start to feel like it does make a difference. You'll see it. And rest is not passive, as we've said. It's a discipline. It's a practice. It's not just a spiritual practice, it's a physical practice and a mental practice and an emotional practice. It is a holistic practice for your whole being, but it's certainly not passive. Certainly not passive. It is a conscious act. And when you learn to do this, and when you discipline yourself and you condition yourself to rest, everything in your life, your mood, your clarity, your relationships, your intuition, everything comes back online in ways that you couldn't imagine.
Well, I think one important topic to just circle back around to is rest and self-worth. Mm-hmm. So many of us are constantly trying to achieve. We are so afraid of being lesser than that we forget how much rest is vital to our existence, that we deserve all the time we need to recuperate. Doesn't mean we're going to necessarily get it in this day and age when it comes to having to work a job, pay bills, but we can grant ourselves the respect to allot that time within our lives. One of the greatest things I became aware of is how when we have chores and tasks in our life, often they are so much greater in our minds as far as the time and effort it's going to take to complete them. But if we can be structured with our lifestyles, we can create time almost any day for this rest. And you can call me out in the comments on this or not, but life requires this of us. And the more we ignore its call, the more it'll eventually come for its tab. That bill will come due.
Yeah. Yes, it does. And the more you stack them, the harder it is to pay it. But this idea kind of moves us from that physical practice into holistic practice of healing. This takes us beyond rest and into healing. Holy, right? Because really, as you're pointing out here, it's not about time. It's about worth for a lot of people. So there are lots of you out there that only allow yourselves to rest when you are completely unable to move physically, or when you're sick, or when you've just crashed out, as the kids say.
Yeah. Breakdown is what I was thinking of.
Well, we used to call it breakdowns, you know. They call it crashing out now, Michael. Get with the times. You get crashing out. Or like I said, when you're just forced to stop, literally stop. And this may reveal a deeper pattern that you have within inside you. You know, this whole I only deserve rest when I've earned it. That's a prison. That's not just a pitfall, it's a prison. And what sucks is that you may not have laid the foundation of that prison, you know, how you were raised and things like that, probably did that, but you certainly built the walls over the years. Instead of building bridges with your bricks, you built the walls. You do not need to justify your existence for anyone, to anyone, for any reason. You certainly don't need to justify your existence by constantly doing or producing or fixing or helping or rescuing or whatever, right? You have to shake this belief that rest is a reward, because it is not. It is a basic human need. We need this or we will die, right?
Yeah.
This is where this shifts into healing, because there is the truth, the real truth is you are allowed to pause even when nothing is wrong.
Amen.
You don't need my permission, but I'm just telling you, this is just what it is. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to fall apart. You're allowed to do these things because that's what you were built for. It's what you're built to do it from time to time. We need this stuff sometimes.
Well, rest is not quitting. It is choosing not to destroy yourself in the name of proving you are enough. You do not need to collapse to deserve peace.
Yes. Proving to whom, you know? I get it. I understand. But I'm here to tell you, you don't have to prove shit to anyone. You need to learn to love yourself, trust yourself, and take care of yourself. Radical responsibility. You are allowed to do these things. And again, I'm not giving you permission. I'm trying to help you remember, right? This was put into you. You are a sovereign being in a vast, infinite universe. Everything we do has consequences, of course. And I won't say you can do whatever you want, but really you can. I mean, so why not do the things that help you, too? We do a lot that hurts ourselves. We can do the good things too, the things that help us, the things that heal, you know. Your value does not depend on your output. It doesn't. Show me someone who's literally able truly to show up with their 100% every day.
Don't exist.
They don't. And if they do, they're masking. They tell you they can, they're masking. And they need a break. They need to rest. How important are boundaries for rest, Michael?
Oh, boundaries are vital. If we can't tell people no when we mean it, when we can't express our needs when we feel it, we end up creating a life that drains us, that overwhelms us, and it will eventually take its toll.
Yeah. This constant pouring, constant giving, that's trauma. That's a lack of boundaries. That's not generosity. We talked about what true generosity looked like in a few shows ago in November, right? And generosity is important. It is a cornerstone of a night. It's a cornerstone of a luminary of what we seek to do in the world. But this is not generosity. This constant pouring and constant giving. And when you provide those boundaries, you start to acknowledge your limits and your needs and your humanity. We have axioms for that too. How important is self-trust for rest?
It's another vital one, because you've got to be able to trust your intuition, to listen to your body when it gives you the signs. So often we bulldoze right through it, and that's when we really start getting into trouble.
Yeah. Self-trust is everything. Really is. It's the heart of it's at the heart of shadow work. You must trust yourself. All parts of yourself, even the stuff that we'd like to avoid. You have to trust yourself, right? Because self-trust really, what it really means here is believing that you can stop without everything falling apart. It won't. It won't. If you die at your desk tomorrow, they will replace you in a week. Everything else keeps going, whether you're here or not. But you cannot allow yourself to think that everything will fall apart without you. You have to take care of yourself, because your job won't take care of you, right?
Yep.
They won't. You have to.
And to your point also, not only will things keep going as they are if you perish, things will go on if you give yourself time to rest.
Yes,
The world will not burn down if you stop for a little bit.
that's right. That's right. But you'll be better for it. The world's going to do what the world is going to do. It's just the way it is. But you can do it. You can do it in a way, because I could say we can allow the world. We don't allow the world to do anything. The world's going to do what it does. We must look out for ourselves. We must have trust in ourselves and love for ourselves and grace and all the things. All the things that I teach for you to give others, you must first give to yourself. You must, because, like we talk about this, rest and identity kind of have a problem sometimes, because depending on how you were raised or how you developed over time into adulthood, or even whatever kind of masking you developed at work or at church or wherever you go, a lot of that comes from performance. So again, those identities aren't who you are. It's who you thought you had to be. Or maybe who you did have to be for a moment, right?
Yeah, sometimes life does that demand out of us, but it's important to take the time when we can.
In the way of light, rest is sacred, and it must be protected that way. It must be seen as sacred and purposeful and necessary. Stillness is spiritual discipline. Rest is communion with Source. Those who muddle through life will never understand it. Rest clears the mind, so you stop muddling and start seeing, start discerning, having clarity in your life. Integrity, we must live aligned with our needs. The sanctity of life, we must honor our own life as sacred. Responsibility, we must care for ourselves and care for our energy and care for our whole being. Grace, we must grant ourselves rest without ever requiring perfection. What is more important than perfection?
Being imperfect? Nah.
Presence. Presence over perfection every time. When you practice your rest, you're not being lazy, you're not being difficult, you're not being whatever. You're healing. So all these hard parts of it, those are natural. And if you need some guidance, hit us up in the comments. We're happy to answer. We're happy to engage. We're happy to help you through it.
We're here for you. Do you have any other closing thoughts before we get to the affirmations?
I do. So this is a returning to Source for me when I think of rest. It's a returning to that rhythm, that flow, right? Alignment. It's not an absence of effort. It's those moments that we give our mind, our body, our heart, our spirit to return to that original rhythm, that natural rhythm, that flow again. And if you take anything away from this episode, let it be that you're not meant to live just clenched up and tense all the time. You're not meant to be here and be exhausted all the time or stressed. You're not meant to live as a machine. Rest is not a luxury, and it's certainly not something you earn. It is a discipline that keeps you steady and keeps you in balance and keeps you stable, and it keeps your intuition alive. And the truth is, choosing rest is an act of self-love and self-care, because nobody's going to take care of you better than you in this way. It's really an act of spiritual, well, I won't even say spiritual. It's an act of holistic rebellion, Michael, in a world addicted to hurry.
Yeah.
It's choosing to value your life more than your productivity. It's choosing to listen to your body instead of all the pressure around you and all the demands and all the expectations and agreements. So rest is how you protect yourself from destruction. It's how you remain that vessel of clarity. So this week, I want you guys, my call of action this week is choose one intentional practice of real rest. Not just sleep, not just numbing, not zoning out, but real rest. That could be 10 minutes of silence, a slow, good session of box breathing before you pick up your phone, or saying no to something that just utterly drains you, right? Or laying down, not for the purpose of sleeping, but for the purpose of just letting your body relax, melting into the couch or sofa or floor or whatever. So, and let today, the day you're hearing this, let today be the beginning of a new relationship with rest. That's what I'll leave you with.
Beautiful. For our affirmations today, I do not need to earn rest through exhaustion. Slowing down restores my clarity and strength. My nervous system is allowed to soften. Rest is a part of my purpose, not a distraction from it. I'm allowed to exist without performing. For our journaling prompts today, what do I feel when I try to truly rest without distractions? What comes up? What are you feeling? What are you running from? Where did I learn that productivity equals worth? What kind of rest does my body need right now? Not theoretically.
And I would just say for the second one, that's going to be a tough one for you guys if you've never done that introspection. But try not to blame and try not to feel shame when you do the second one.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Please give us a subscribe, a comment, a like, a follow. Also check us out on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We're all over the place. And don't forget to check out the best website ever, newashla.com. With love and
But make
gratitude.
sure you watch our shorts in moderation, or Michael will find us.
Yes, with love and gratitude. Ad Lucium.
Ad Lucem.